Wokeism is sort of this beast that's born out of empathy and wanting to sort of shelter people from perceived suffering and oppression.
I love how Amala describes wokeness as a beast that is born out of empathy and wanting to shelter people from perceived suffering and oppression. It's a monster that is born out of a strong desire to show understanding, awareness, sensitivity, and to vicariously experience the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of people who believe themselves to be oppressed. Note that the key word in this explanation is perceived. There is a difference between actual suffering and oppression and perceived suffering and oppression. Actual means it's a matter of fact and is based on reality, whereas perceived means something being regarded in a specified way and is used to say how something or someone is seen or thought of. For example, a perceived threat is something that is thought of as being an actual threat, but in reality, it's not. That being said, I would like to pose the question, what happens when the perceived threat becomes the threat itself? In this video, I will do my best to explain what wokeness is and how it's helping neither the West nor Korea progress and move forward in a way that is healthy for all of us as human beings, and also how it's affecting our consumption of K-pop. So without any further ado, let us plunge into the jaws of the beast born out of empathy together. The beast known as wokeism. Woke is a term that was started in the mid-1900s by Black Americans to call out the prejudice, discrimination, and racial injustices against Black people in the U.S. during the Civil Rights Movement. During the Civil Rights Movement, Black Americans struggled for social justice, and this went on in the 1950s and 1960s. The Civil War officially abolished slavery, but it did not end discrimination against Black people. They continued to suffer from the devastating effects of racism, especially in the South. By the mid-20th century, Black Americans, along with many other Americans, mobilized and began a strong fight for equality that spanned 2 decades. During that time, Black Americans were facing a real threat in the form of the Jim Crow laws. Blacks began taking on leadership roles, holding public office, and seeking legislative changes for equality and the right to vote. And it was during this time when the famous saying, "Get woke," was born. This saying was used to bring attention to the hatred and racial discrimination that Blacks were facing on a day-to-day basis. Blacks were beaten, put in jail, hosed down, had dogs attack them on the street, had their churches and homes burned to the ground, had to give up their seat to a white person, and moved to the back of the bus. They couldn't vote, used separate bathrooms, drank from separate fountains, went to different schools, had to come in from the back end of restaurants rather than through the front door because of the color of their skin, tortured and even unalived. You couldn't even walk outside at a certain time of night for fear that that night might be your last. And God forbid if you're a Black man dating a white woman or a Black woman dating a white man. Back in those days, that was like painting a target on your back. It wasn't perceived oppression or suffering. It was real. For some reason, however, Black Americans seem to be laboring under the delusion that we are still suffering and oppressed to this day. And even after real oppression in this country has been done away with, Black Americans still can't seem to mentally break free from its grasp. Why is that? Because we are conditioned to believe since childhood that the Black race is still oppressed, calling white people racist whether they're aware of it or not, and telling them they need to be held accountable for what their ancestors did to ours. And so the cycle never ends. You start to eventually try to convince everyone around you that we are still suffering and that the system is rigged against us because, well, we're Black. and who continue to preach this until everyone, including yourself, believes that your perceived oppression is your identity, and that that very oppression is etched within the very color of your skin. So in a way, by your own belief system, you are marked for oppression. Now, wokeism is creating your own form of oppression and saying that it's the same form of oppression from decades past, just covert. We've created our own instruments of suffering with all these isms and phobias, and the isms that still exist from years past, we claim are the real reason why we can't get ahead in life, instead of us taking accountability for what we can do to get ahead in life. This is the new woke. It's permeating throughout the United States in particular, and is being imposed upon other countries that would be better off without these ideologies force-fed down their throats. Now, as much as I would like to dive into the K-pop aspect of this straight away, I can't, at least not at the moment. You see, in order for me to talk about woke ideologies infiltrating our beloved world of K-pop, I have to first talk about the source of it. Before I can even deal with Korea, I have to deal with my own country first. Okay, some context. So the point of me making this video is because Choujimi, who is another content creator, another K-tuber, who I highly recommend you subscribe to and like his videos and watch his videos, because he has some really, really good insights and he's a really cool dude. So definitely check out his YouTube channel. He has some really good content, okay? Shameless plug for my brother there. So he had made a response video to Everglowup's Gen Z and Alpha are ruining K-pop video. In that video, he posed the question, what is woke? He said that, quote, people need to explain what the word woke means to them if they're going to use it as a part of their discussion or argument, because it literally means nothing, end quote. He also said, quote, oftentimes I feel like it just boils down to whatever you disagree with, that's what woke is. So it's entirely subjective to the person who's using it, end quote. The problem with saying that the idea of what is woke is subjective to each person is that it suggests there is no clear distinction between what is actual oppression and what is perceived oppression, right? There's no clear definition for woke, and so everybody's perspective of woke is validated through their own experiences. However, that's not the case, because there is a distinction between what is real and what is perceived. Therefore, what woke was back in the 1900s and what woke is today has changed, because instead of real problems, people have created their own problems. What do I mean? Well, let's go down the list of real cases of oppression in history, shall we? So, what happened in the 1960s during the civil rights movement, as we just discussed, was oppression. The Trail of Tears, which took place between 1837 and 1839 under the leadership of President Andrew Jackson, where the Cherokees were forced out of their ancestral homes in Georgia and were forced to migrate until they ended up in the state of Oklahoma, that was oppression. Slavery of any race in any part of the world is and was oppression. Women not being able to have the right to vote, as well as other rights that men have in other countries, including this one, was and is oppression. What Nazis did to the Jews during the Holocaust was oppression. Those are forms of oppression, right? That's real oppression. But you telling somebody that if you refuse to eat sweets or fast food like burgers and fries for the purpose of not getting fat and trying to be healthy, then you have internalized fat phobia and you're discriminating against fat people. That's perceived oppression. That's not real. It's the same thing as saying if you are not attracted to plus size women, then you have internalized fat phobia and you're being discriminatory against the plus size community. That is also not real. Everybody has personal preference, and you can't just say that if a person's not attracted to women who are your size, then that's discriminatory against plus size women, because it's not a social justice issue. You can't treat it like a social justice issue. It's not. It's personal preference. Everyone has one. You know, women who also are not attracted to plus size men, there's nothing wrong with that. But apparently there's something wrong with a man not being attracted to a plus size woman for some odd reason. Everybody has their preference. Which brings me to my next point. Plus size women who at one point loved Adele, not only for her incredible voice, but also because she was a thicker lady back in the day, now shame her for losing the weight for the sake of being healthy, calling her fat phobic and discriminatory against the plus size community. Why? Well, because they lost their shining symbol of hope and validation for why they choose to live in that state rather than change their ways and eat healthy, which is where the body positivity stuff came from. But what happens when the same ones preaching body positivity start shaming others for losing weight because they don't want to accept the fact that there are people who see the dangers of obesity and want to lose weight to be healthy and to live longer lives? Being comfortable in your own skin and embracing your features is a great message, don't get me wrong. In fact, there was something called fat activism in the 1960s. That's where the whole body positivity movement came from in the first place, alongside activism among ethnic minority women, and these groups protesting against structural biases and discrimination, especially from the fashion and beauty industries that profited from making people and communities feel inadequate. Seems like everything's coming from the 1960s for some odd reason. Keep that in mind. In today's time, however, body positivity means something totally different. Now it's based on how you are perceived by others, there goes that word again, and also how you perceive yourself. It's now the mindset of, I'm beautiful no matter what, and I need to think of myself as such so that my life can be better and so that I can be happy. It's like putting a moving door in front of a person and telling them to run to the door, knowing that the door will constantly keep moving further and further back so that that person will never reach the door. I hope that makes sense. And don't get me wrong, some of that is still going on to this day, not just in the US, but in other places as well. However, we tend to lump everything together and call it one thing. And that's why no one can tell the difference anymore between what is real and what is perceived. Anything that is labeled a form of discrimination is put under the category of subjectivity, which leaves no room for objectivity. Telling someone that the police had no right to arrest a black man for being black and eating a sandwich, calling it discrimination against black people, while at the same time denying the fact that he was arrested firstly because he was eating in an area no one was supposed to be eating in on the subway platform. And secondly, and most importantly, he was being argumentative to the police officer and refusing to leave when told to, which, by the way, is resisting, even if he's not using force, which caused the police to put cuffs on the man.
You're not on BART.
I just explained to you that you were detained. Did I not? You are detained and you're not free to go. Which part of that
bro, you come up here and with me. You single me out out of all these people.
You're eating.
Bro, so what?
It's against the law.
So what?
I tried
It'll
to
be done
explain
fucking
that
on
to
BART.
you.
Let my
It's a violation of California law. I have the right to detain you.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Can you please let my backpack go?
Are you going to cooperate?
So
Yeah.
you cooperate with me?
You're going to go to jail.
I'm not going to jail for eating a sandwich.
No, for resisting arrest.
I'm not resisting arrest.
You are resisting
I haven't done
right
anything
now.
wrong. I haven't done nothing wrong. Let my bag go, bro. What are you, bro? What are you doing,
Yeah,
bro?
we got
Let
a
my
guy eating
bag
on the
go.
platform who's uncooperative. Somebody's got to eat.
Bro, bring him up here then.
It's a violation of California law. I've already said that. Yeah. No, because you're detained. You're not free to
Get out
go.
my face, bro. Why are you in my face? Why are you in my face?
Why are you resisting arrest?
I'm not resisting arrest. I'm not under arrest. I've done nothing wrong.
Violation of
So
California
what?
law.
I can't wait to post
Damn,
this.
my friend's here. Now let my bag go. Bro, let my bag go, bro. This came up here and started fucking with me because I was eating a fucking sandwich. Did nothing wrong. Pay for my chicken and everything.
What's going on here?
He came up here arrested.
All right, I need to turn around.
No, I've
Turn around now.
I've done nothing wrong.
Turn around, man.
Stop.
Relax.
Just listen.
Stop
Just
resisting.
listen. Just listen.
Ain't nobody
Stop
resisting.
resisting.
Ain't nobody resisting.
Just listen.
You see this? Nobody resisting.
You didn't even do anything. You got 4 cops eating a sandwich. He
4
was just
cops
eating
for
a
a
sandwich.
sandwich?
That's all he did was eat
4
a sandwich.
cops for
Stop resisting, okay?
Ain't nobody resisting.
Stop.
Nobody resisting.
Former member of FX, Amber Liu, was shown this very video on a webcast show called Just Kidding News. On the show, she said that the police officer was in the right for arresting the man for breaking the law, and also said, quote, he deserved it. However, this didn't go over well with netizens who insisted that the arrest was racially motivated and called Amber racist for saying that he, a black man, deserved to be arrested. At the same time, these netizens demanded that she educate herself and apologize for her racist remarks. And guess what? She apologized and said that she would educate herself. And in her apology, she went through every talking point that these herd mentality individuals were spewing at her as a way to explain the reasons to why and how she messed up and needed to apologize. And as you can see, they still didn't accept her apology and insisted that she is racist and ignorant because in their minds, the skin color of the person was the reason as to why he was singled out by a white police officer. It was not because he was the only one on the platform eating when he shouldn't have been. This is what happens when you throw out context just to push a racially motivated narrative, while shaming the person who came to the right conclusion about the situation and telling them that they need to see things from their perspective instead of the right perspective. That is called virtue signaling. Virtue signaling is the act of expressing a viewpoint, often in a pretentious manner, with the intent of displaying morality and communicating good character. And for my own benefit, I looked up the word pretentious just to make sure. So the word pretentious means making usually unjustified or excessive claims as of value or standing. This is the kind of behavior that I'm talking about. The type of behavior that tells people that they are wrong for looking at the facts and drawing the right conclusion, and that they need to bow down to what the so-called champions of social justice perceive as black oppression. And just like that, Amber got canceled in the US for using her brain and seeing the situation for what it was: a man getting arrested for breaking the law. It's perceived oppression because he wasn't arrested for being black. He was arrested for not complying and for breaking California law. If he had just said, you know what, my bad, I'll stop eating and I'll put my sandwich away in my bag and I'll eat it later, I believe that would have been all she wrote. No arrest, no nothing. But because he chose to argue with the officer instead of just obey what the officer told him, he got arrested. Has nothing to do with black oppression or police brutality. But when people dismiss the facts and blame the arrest on the man's skin color and try to use this as an example to make people aware of racism in this country, that is the new woke. Here's another example. An unknown artist by the name of Baby Storm posted a video to Twitter. Along with the video, she posted a tweet that reads, quote, "Racist Target employee called the police on us for dancing in Target. So we danced anyway." End quote. Now, if you read the tweet and you haven't watched the video, you would assume, okay, she's being racially discriminated against, right? Well, that's not the case. If you watch the video, you will see that she's being told by a Target employee that what she is doing is becoming a safety hazard for people. And rightfully so, because people are trying to move past her while they're shopping, browsing around, you know, what normal people do at a retail store. But no, she decides, I'm gonna bust up in here in this Target with my crew, and we're going to just disturb the peace, and I'm gonna record a music video and film it and have my crew and me taking up all this space while people are trying to do their daily things. The employees, I'm going to prevent them from doing their job, and I'm going to prevent the customers from shopping peacefully. 2 employees told them, "You're not allowed to record an MV here." Well, someone from Baby Storm's crew says, quote, "Hey, if we all just start and multiple people record, they can't block everyone," end quote. Followed by her saying, quote, "We can sing it too," end quote. And so they carry on with the MV despite being told that the cops are going to be called and that they need to stop. I'll show you a brief little part of the video right here, just so you can get an idea of what foolishness this is. Now, if they had called up the manager and asked for their permission to film, that's one thing. However, if they say no, well, you'll have to find another place. But the level of entitlement, ego, and downright foolishness of it all, and the fact that she tried to convince everyone in this video that she's feeling oppressed and emotional while trying to do the dance, when in the video it's clear she's smiling and happy, just speaks volumes as to how fake she's being about this whole race thing. No one is oppressing her. She's fine. I mean, look at her. Does this look like the person who's oppressed in the video? Does this look like an oppressed black person? Doesn't look like that to me. By the way, I think it's fair to point out that in the midst of calling out all this racism that she supposedly was trying to do on this video, she has both white and black girls and some guys dancing in this MV along with her. So I guess the moral of the story is, it is wrong for a person who happens to be white to call the cops on a person who happens to be black for doing something they're not supposed to be doing, because apparently that's racist. That doesn't even make sense. But this is how they like to package things, in that bow, that beautiful royal ribbon of racism and discrimination. When an agency tells you what their standards are and you shame them for having those standards by calling them discriminatory against plus-size people and calling for them to be canceled, you're creating your own problem that only you can solve by virtue signaling. Now, I do want to say this. I feel like I have not quite tackled this subject as well as I could have in previous videos that I've talked about this, because I've only briefly talked about it. I've been saying that it's when you create a problem that only you can solve, and that is partially true, but it's not entirely what the savior complex is. So let me tell you guys what the savior complex is, and this is a very good opportunity and moment within this essay to explain this. So, savior complex is feeling like you can save everyone in your life from their own mistakes and troubles. It's also called the messiah complex, which is a more extreme version of savior complex, which is basically a mental state in which a person believes they are a messiah or prophet and will save or redeem people in a religious endeavor. And in a way, that's kind of what wokeness has become. It's evolved from just a stand against inequality and a stand against racial discrimination and oppression, and it's become almost a religion, a religious cult, the cult of wokeism, if you will. And that's what it's become today, where people feel like everyone else has the problem and that they are the ones that are sent by God to do his work and save them from themselves. But in reality, it's those people that actually have a problem in their minds. A woman who knows she doesn't belong in this space of models that are sporting fit clothing for women of their size, but she's trying to tell them that they're wrong because in her mind they're discriminating. And so she's trying to point out a problem that was never really there because she was told that you would have to lose weight in order to fit into these clothes that they have been making, and that they do not specialize in plus size women clothes. It's not a part of their brand. And she's trying to bring awareness to it and say, well, that's wrong and you're discriminating with that. That's not really what's happening at all. Now you have this situation where this woman is trying to correct something that does not need correcting, solve a problem that's not really there. And thus, this is where this whole Messiah complex, savior complex thing comes from. So to sum it all up, oppression that was created as a problem to be solved by the people who created the oppression in the first place, which is where the savior complex comes into play. They literally create the problem so they can show people just how much of an ally they are. If you can convince enough people to become allies to your cause of spreading the gospel of fat phobia to everybody, all you've done is create another form of oppression through what you believe to be activism by shaming healthy people for being healthy. Wokeism is someone telling people, hey, you need to believe this or that, and if you don't, then you're part of the problem in this world. Wokeism is also telling people who are not the oppressed that they also need to believe that we are oppressed people so that they can walk on eggshells around us and be extra sensitive and careful about what they say, because every little thing will offend us and they'll be canceled for it. This is the power of the self-proclaimed oppressed people. If you don't believe that you are oppressed or that you are being held back and suppressed by the powers that be because you're a minority, then you're in denial of your own oppression and you need to be re-educated. And so does anyone else who does something cultural appropriating towards another culture, or at least what we claim to be cultural appropriation, because we're all about canceling people and re-educating people, right? Wokeism is when you see something happen and claim that it happened because of an ism, while willfully ignoring every other factor to the contrary as to why that incident took place, and then trying to convince everyone who looks at the facts to disregard them because the facts are not as big as the perceived ism itself. The same ideology is being force-fed to K-pop idols. Actors, actresses, and even entertainment companies are being crushed under the weight of Western woke ideologies. For example, you are committing cultural appropriation because you are wearing a do-rag. Leave our hairstyles alone. They don't belong to you. They are black owned. Your hair is not that texture anyway. I don't care if it's your hair. You don't have the right to wear whatever hairstyle you want because black people were oppressed and still are oppressed. So don't wear our hairstyles, blah, blah, blah. It's reversed engineered segregation. We were segregated from having the rights and freedoms to do things that everyone else does. Now that we're free, we're segregating everyone and telling them that they don't have the right to wear their hair however they want. Guess what? That's woke. You are racist because you said the N-word, whether it was accidental or on purpose. But because we're black, we can use the N-word till we're blue in the face because it's my way of showing everyone that I am a free, independent black man who can think for himself by calling a fellow free black person a racial slur as a term of endearment. But you K-pop idols better not say that word. Otherwise, you're part of the reason we can't progress in society. Just think about that for a minute. Let's ignore the context of the song. If you curse at a woman in your song, regardless of the context, then you're a misogynist and you're showing prejudice and discrimination towards women, and we need to protect women from you as a result. Women should be respected. So instead, let women call each other bees and hoes. and let the women call men names instead, because they are oppressed by the patriarchy and all men are bad, blah, blah, blah. Which leads me to my next point about this. It's very disingenuous for black K-pop fans, not all black K-pop fans, but just the ones that enjoy music that have the words B, ho, and F-U, F that B, F that ho, stuff like that. It's very disingenuous for them to try to virtue signal on Leo for using words like that in his song, when you've got people, like I said, literally black K-pop fans, even some white K-pop fans, who love hearing their favorite black rappers rapping about F that ho, and you B, M, F-a, N-word, and all this other stuff. They love those songs, but for some reason there's this weird double standard that when an Asian or any other person who's not black, obviously, uses words like these to black K-pop stans who don't understand the hypocrisy that they are diving into, they can't see that what they're saying is that basically the meanings of the words change with the ethnicity of the person who's using them. When a black person raps and uses these words, ain't no problem. When an Asian uses these words and raps with these words in them, they're all of a sudden a misogynist. How do you go from one position to an extreme position? And I mean a very extreme position. How do you go from, oh, I love that song, that's my favorite song, I know he say B ho, F that trick, F that ho, F, F that slut, da 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 da, and use the N-word in every other word. But when Leo or anybody else who's not black uses these words in a rap, especially if it's in Korea, for some odd reason, it's like misogyny. He's advocating for accosting women. He's advocating for essaying women. All of this stuff. How do we get there? How do we get there, guys? I don't understand. And this is why I'm making a big deal about this Leo section, because the hypocrisy and the virtue signaling of these woke weirdos who claim to be K-pop fans and then tried to accuse Leo of saying stuff about hurting women when he's not talking about hurting women at all. There was not one verse in there where he was talking about wanting to actually put his hands on a woman. I debated people who were talking about this, and because they could not beat me in the debate, they resorted to saying, well, he verbally abused the woman in his rap. You are what you attract, okay? If you like this kind of music, it's probably because you talk like this. And if you talk like this, then you yourself probably would say F that hoe, whether you're a man or a woman. And by the way, B and hoe have nothing to do with the gender of the person being called B and hoe. There are women who call women B and hoe in raps and in real life. There are men who call women and men B and hoe in raps and in real life. So I don't see the reason to get upset about an Asian saying something that you hear in black rap all the time and in black music all the time. You want to get mad at somebody? Get mad at your dang selves and your black representatives of our culture that you praise and worship so much, that say that it's black culture to say stuff like this. People were getting angry at Leo for portraying himself in like angry black caricature of a black person. And yet you like the music. You like the music that calls people B and hoe and F that. So I'm not understanding here. How do you say in the same breath that, oh, I like music that says B and hoe and all this and F you? And when the Asian says it, it's all of a sudden, he's portraying us as angry black people. No, we portray ourselves as angry black people. So it's not really a stereotype. It's not really a caricature. That's literally how we portray ourselves. So maybe we should stop portraying ourselves this way. In music, in media in general, maybe we should stop portraying ourselves as always angry, always upset, and all this other stuff. Because the reason why a lot of people view us this way is because we put it out there. I'm not saying that it's always the case. Some people view us as angry because of our skin color alone, not because of what we put out there. However, we're not helping by putting stuff out there that sounds like angry, black people all the dang time. So maybe if we changed our tune and our tone in what we do and what we say, people won't have this misconception of us. We're part of the reason why people view us the way that they view us. So maybe we need to change something. All right, just something to consider. Just something to consider. I'm just throwing it out there. All right, that's all I got to say about that. Let's move on. And by the way, this is not me advocating for people calling people names. I don't like a man calling a woman a beer hoe. I don't like a woman calling a man being a hoe. I don't like women calling each other these things. I don't like men calling each other these things. I don't advocate for it. I don't like that kind of music anyway. I'm just putting this in here because some people might misunderstand what I'm saying in this particular passage. So I'm just letting you guys know, I don't think this is good for anyone to use these kinds of things to describe each other. That's all I wanted to say about that. Let's move on. Another example of how subjectivity is being seen as the objective truth of society. We talk about protecting women in this country all the time, but if you were to ask a modern woman today in the United States of America, what is a woman? They start going down the list of good characteristics that any human being can possess, male or female, but they don't give you the answer to what is a woman because no one knows what a woman is anymore. And they'll say, but we're trying to protect the women. What women? Everyone who identifies as one. Well, what is a woman? What are we protecting? See, because in the United States, a woman is no longer an adult human female. Now it's a social construct, and anyone who identifies as a woman can be a woman. So now we've lost our perspective of what subjectivity and objectivity are. No one knows what the truth is. Everyone has their own truth now. My truth is I could identify as a woman tomorrow. And guess what? People would actually accept it, when in reality, I'm not nothing close to a woman. I don't have periods. I don't have any of those things. I can't get pregnant. It's just weird. And this is what we've become now, a society of people who value subjective truths that aren't true for everyone. And I think my ultimate point of this is I have no problem with transgender people, transsexual people. I have no problem with that. Okay, I could be friends with trans people. It doesn't bother me at all. What bothers me is when trans people try to make people submit to their ideology and affirm them and force feed that down people's throats so that their existence can be validated through people that are not trans. If they use their transgenderism as a form of oppression, you'll never know what it's like to be trans, which I won't know what it's like to be trans. I don't know how it feels to have gender dysphoria. And I feel really, really bad for the people that suffer that. I would never wish that kind of feeling on my worst enemy, honestly. But don't try to put people in your little box and tell people that they have to affirm you and they have to do this, because that's when the woke stuff starts. I have no problem with you being trans. Just don't try to impose your transness on other people. Let people live their lives. And if they don't adhere to that belief system, leave them be. Right? Or respect that, and you could still be friends with that person. They can still be friends with you. We don't have to, we don't have to go the extreme route and you have to affirm me. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to roll out the red carpet for me because I'm trans. Just like black people, you have to roll out the red carpet for me because I'm black. And I'm not trying to lump trans and black together. It's just that black people use their color as a way to cry oppression, and trans people use their transgenderism to cry out oppression too. We use our color and our sexuality for everything. It's the answer for everything. And that's not true. It shouldn't be. It's very woke to think that way. It really is. And let me say this before I move on to my next point. I'm not saying that all trans people are like that. Okay? I'm not saying that all trans people are trying to impose their beliefs onto other people who aren't trans. I'm saying for those that do, we shouldn't do this. Another example, you need to take the word nega out of your songs so as to not offend black K-pop stans. We know about your culture and your language, but we don't really care that much about all that. But you need to respect our English language. And in our English language, the N-word is derogatory, disgusting, and denotes slavery and property to people who believe themselves to be superior because of the color of their skin and ethnicity. So please change your Korean word to an English word so that we won't have any problems. Meanwhile, we will remain ignorant of your native language. Thank you. Doesn't sound very pleasant, does it? That's because it's not. Listen. K-pop is an amazing genre, and it is one that I have come to love above other genres that I've been exposed to for most of my life. It is a genre that is inclusive, comprised of many different cultural styles of music, combined with Korean language, singing, dancing, rapping, and epic performances with unique concepts that has never been presented in any other genre. That said, I do not want to see other cultures bowing their knees to Western ideologies and woke progressivism beliefs that don't make sense. Furthermore, I also do not want to see my American brothers and sisters believing that they are oppressed people in a free country where oppression is a thing of the past. Nor do I want to see people in my country, my fellow brothers and sisters, also believe that they have to atone for the sins of their ancestors. Believe it or not, everything that I have said in this video relates to South Korea in the sense that we Americans impose these belief systems onto them based on our past experiences or what our grandparents told us about slavery and oppression. And even the white knights that come to the defense of black K-pop stans, that includes Korean stans as well, being an ally to this kind of ideology is why we see so many K-pop idols being hated, shunned, and told that they need to be educated about a particular piece of history that we ourselves are very ignorant to. South Korea has enough problems with cancel culture as it is. Idols being shunned for getting married and having kids, idols getting canceled because of false allegations of bullying, and even if the allegations are proven untrue, just the allegation alone is seen by many K-netizens as a stain on the group's reputation, and thus they urge the companies to kick these artists out of the groups and to have their contracts terminated. Dating as a trainee or an idol is seen as a betrayal of the fans and the company, instead of being seen as something that normal people do all the time. And if two idols or celebs are dating, they try to keep it a secret, and the companies try to hide it as best as they can to avoid the consequences of what they have established as a standard rule for their idols and their celebrities within their industries. Trust me when I say, South Korea doesn't need our help, because all our help will do is bring more problems, more controversies, more unnecessary conflict, and eventually Korea will end up having to change their entire belief system to a more Americanized, hyper-progressive belief system that is based on the sins of the past from a bygone era that once held validity for those who fought against real social injustices. And I know that's a very extreme position to take, but I'm just saying hypothetically. And I know that this is like really extreme. Some of what I'm saying might sound a little extreme, but I'm just saying this is the mentality of how a lot of people feel in the United States, and even Korea, like affirming this, is that this is how they operate. This is how their mind works. And I'm trying to get you guys to see how their minds work. They preach equality. They preach tolerance. They say, we accept everyone. But as soon as you have a view that's not the same as theirs, they attack you for it. And also, they don't investigate anything. They hear that someone is racist or sexist or fatphobic or whatever, and so they just repeat it because it's the quote-unquote right thing to do. And this happens more often than not in the K-pop sphere too. Regardless if you're from the United States or from Korea, it happens in both instances. Woke-minded people perceive subjective truth as objective truth by looking at a situation and projecting their personal experiences onto other people and saying, because I dealt with this and the person turned out to be this, then it must be the same situation and everybody's dealing with the same thing that I'm dealing with. And so they try to convince you that subjective truth is objective truth. That is why everyone now is confused as to what objective truth is. Example, I'm a 32-year-old man, but I know that not every 32-year-old man's experience is the same as my experience. That is where the my truth, his truth, her truth stuff comes from. Our subjective experiences. This is how we view everything from an objective lens. And we confuse objectivity with subjectivity because subjectivity has become more of the rule of thought. So, in a way, we've lost objectivity. What is objectively true? Oftentimes, the objective truth is the factor least considered, and the subjective truth is the I see it, therefore it is point of view, a conclusion to which any person could come to without the proper context. Every white person or Asian that wears a do-rag is racist and is practicing cultural appropriation. I think there is a blend of both racism and respect for people that wear do-rags and black hairstyles, but to assume that all of them are racist for doing this doesn't sound sensible to me. One statement is subjective based on a person's experience, whilst the other is based on objective truth, that there are both racists and non-racists in the world. People who respect black culture and wear those hairstyles for that purpose, and people who wear do-rags for the purpose of making a parody or a cultural stereotype of black people. That is more true than saying that everybody that does this is racist. And that is true balance. Choujimi brought up the topic of Americans being overly sensitive. Quote, isn't sensitivity a little ideal? To be a little more sensitive to the people around you, a little more aware of the problems of the people around you? End quote. He goes on to say that being overly sensitive isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that the only problem is balance. However, the fact he believes there can be balance means that Choujimi is the right kind of sensitive. I would call it sensible sensitivity, which is simply the ability to be sensitive and apathetic towards people's struggles and challenges, but yet be reasonable, rational, and sensible at the same time, which is hard for overly sensitive people to do. If Choujimi was overly sensitive, there's no way he would have even thought that balance would even enter into the equation. Overly sensitive people don't make room for balance. If you try to give balance to the arguments of a person that is too sensitive or overly sensitive, they refuse your perspective, reject it even, because they are convinced that they're right and everybody else is wrong, because they are awake and everybody else needs to quote unquote wake up or forever remain ignorant. They are so sensitive that there is no room whatsoever for an opposite argument that benefits both parties and sees both sides. When you're dealing with a person that's too sensitive or overly sensitive about a specific topic, their opinion must be above yours and everyone else's opinion that does not align with theirs, because they believe their views to be morally right and politically correct, when in reality they are bereft of common sense, critical thinking, and deductive reasoning. That is the only way that both arguments will be beneficial, is if one is subservient to the other. So I think Choujimi is the right kind of sensitive, the kind that sees that there can be balance. Perhaps even an argument can be made that two things can be true at once. That's more true than generalizing everyone and putting everyone in one group. Choujimi uses the example of a pendulum. I would say it's more like a scale that's never balanced. And honestly, the scales will never be balanced because they view balance as the scale being tipped in their favor, in an argument, in a point of view, in an ideology, in everything basically. So they will never be balanced for a person who's too sensitive and has an unwavering opinion about something. I do agree with Choujimi on the point that he made about Americans coming to the realization of how much of a problem they've been in the world, and that, quote, the want for sensitivity comes from not wanting to make the same mistakes, end quote. So we get loud and call out cultural appropriation and racism and all these other things from both America and Korea, to be honest. However, when you get down to it, both sides are now making the mistake of calling things racist and cultural appropriation and all these other isms and labels that we are slapping on everything, when some of them are actually not any of those things. So now we're making a whole new mistake of putting everything in the category of ist and phobe, who we believe are doing things that we perceive to be a personal or racial attack, when some of it is actually them showing respect. As the saying goes, imitation is the biggest form of flattery. But we don't believe that anymore. Apparently everything's an attack on our identity, so we sink into our own oppression as a nation. It's almost as if we embrace being miserable and we want others to embrace our misery with us. We've gotten to a point where we now embrace oppression, whether we know it or not. We embrace it. It is an ally to us. It's what validates us. It's what gives us a voice. Instead of lifting our heads above oppression and moving forward in a way that's more progressive, yelling at the top of your lungs that someone's being racist to you when they're not is not progressive. It's childish, and it's the exact opposite of progression. Woke is the opposite of real. It is what is perceived, not what is a matter of fact. It is subjective truth, not objective truth. It's actually a form of selfishness, because it's almost like you're saying the world revolves around me and my belief system, and that everybody should bend the knee to my belief system. Otherwise, you're not woke, when in reality, they're the ones who are not woke, but rather they are in their fantasy world where they are always oppressed. The key principle of wokeness is that your feelings matter more than the truth, to the point where your feelings become truth, while the real truth fades into obscurity, which is why a number of Americans today are confused as to what truth is. We have confused subjectivity for objectivity, truth for what is perceived, and have replaced facts with feelings, even going so far as trying to explain the validity of our feelings through factual information, refusing to understand that facts and feelings don't mix. And when someone explains the real truth to them, they lash out in rage, because our explanations with factual evidence rightly implemented disproves every vain imagination and feeling that they have. When you look at the world through a subjective lens only, and you believe that your personal experiences are the objective truth of the world, you are practicing woke ideology that is not grounded in truth or reality. And this is no different from Korea and how they treat idols and celebrities. Seeing idols and celebrities as otherworldly beings touched by divinity and blessed with privilege and a responsibility to show their best self only, and never to show anything less than perfection, beauty, class, grace, elegance, and to never make mistakes. This is one of the reasons why the Korean entertainment system fails so badly, especially today when dating another person or getting married while still in a group is seen as shameful and not becoming of an upstanding person in society. If you make a mistake as an idol or celebrity, it's amplified 10 times more than if the average Korean citizen makes the same exact mistake. Even if you did something normal, like smoke, drink, gain weight, lose weight, it's amplified when you're an idol or a celebrity. False allegations of bullying and harassment come out of thin air just to ruin the reputation of an artist that a group of people don't like in a particular K-pop group. And for that, they have their livelihood taken away from them, and they are canceled, prevented from promoting themselves, and it's a miracle if they ever bounce back from such a devastating and life-altering situation in an industry where companies and K-netizens are unforgiving. Should we talk about skin color and sexuality and gender? Sure, I have nothing against talking about these things, but the problem is that we're not just talking about it, we're obsessing over it and weaponizing it against other people, and that's where the problems start with K-netizens and Western netizens alike. It's being used as a sword and a shield against people who don't share the woke viewpoint, a shield to protect ourselves from rightful judgment and criticism, and a sword against people when we feel like we're being oppressed, and also when we're losing an argument, like pulling the black card out because we have no other point to make. And it's being used as a way to shut down anyone who dares question you or your beliefs. We've weaponized culture against people who are trying to express themselves in a way that is paying homage to our culture and other cultures, and we demonize them for it. This is unhealthy behavior. Looking at each and every tribute to a person's culture as an attack on said culture is unhealthy obsession and weaponization. A man by the name of Douglas Murray did an interview on wokeness, and in that interview, he made a very powerful statement. He said, quote, "The madness centers around the fact that in half a century since Martin Luther King gave us perhaps the great moral insight of the late 20th century, the idea, the aspiration, the dream, that we should see people and judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Half a century after that, we have found ourselves unbelievably, amazingly, talking obsessively about people's skin color, obsessively about their sex, obsessively about their sexual orientation. And this is being driven by people who believe that they are doing this and acting in this way in order to make us all freer. And they're not. They're tying everyone down. They're tying us up. They're holding everybody back." End quote. When given a clear definition of what the term woke means today, he summed it up perfectly. Quote, "The term woke, as it's come to be understood, is a pretty useful and slightly lighthearted description of the sort of person who believes that their mission in life is to correct the behaviors and thought mechanisms of every other human being on planet Earth." End quote. We need to stop attacking idols for wearing whatever hairstyle they want. It's their hair. Leave them alone. Unless you want me to believe that every time an idol wears a hairstyle that you claim is black owned, you're tossing and turning in your bed at night and not able to sleep because you're constantly thinking about it and how it is damaging to our culture and disrespectful to black people and any other race. So what if they wear a do-rag? It's their do-rag. Let them wear it. Stop telling idols that they are not allowed to do certain things because of your hurt feelings and fragile-mindedness. There are K-netizens who are already fat-shaming and skinny-shaming idols and celebrities. We don't need to join in with that. And the ones that defend the idols over their bodies end up shaming them for something else, like wearing box braids and dreads. So it's like, really? After all, we praise male idols for wearing gender-bending clothing. Why can't we praise them for wearing whatever hairstyle they want? We commend idols, both male and female, for breaking gender norms, like Lee Tae-min from SHINee and Amber Liu from FX. But we still can't get the race stuff out of our heads. What they wear, whether it's a hairstyle or a piece of clothing, does not tell you everything about their character. Yet we judge people based on what they are wearing, as well as their skin color and ethnicity. Let that sink in. I thought the whole point of progressivism was moving past all of this. A Korean guy says that they're attracted to brighter skinned girls. So what? What does that have to do with you? If you're not the person they're talking about, you should be okay with that. Instead of taking that opportunity to virtue signal and make it about colorism, which it's not. It's just personal preference. You're offended because he's talking about skin color, but it's not in a way that is rude or disrespectful. But we can't help but view things from a victimization and oppression point of view or mindset. And that's just not true. It's not true. If a person says that they are attracted to this person because of X, Y, and Z, they're just being honest. I don't understand why it's racist or colorist to be honest and tell the truth about what attracts you to a particular person. It makes no sense to me. We've called things evil that aren't even evil. Why are you offended at a personal preference? It's okay for women to have personal preferences in today's time, but when a man has a personal preference, it's seen as, oh, you're fat shaming, oh, you're skinny shaming. You're discriminating against lighter skinned girls. You're discriminating against darker skinned girls. It's like the reverse. It's weird. But when women do it, it's fine. It's a personal preference. It's normal. This is what we're normalizing today. Someone who doesn't like me comes up to me and says something about my skin color in a negative way. And obviously they're saying it to hurt me because, again, they don't like me. They can't stand my guts. Yeah, they're being colorist, I guess. Or they're just picking on my skin because, you know, they just pick on everything. Not everything is colorist, but you could see it as colorism if they say certain things about my skin. Like if it's a lighter skinned dude that's picking on me and they call me a field N-word, yeah, that's colorist. That's definitely colorist. If I'm being discriminated against by other black people because I'm a darker shade than they are, or a lighter shade than they are, that is also colorist. Prejudice, discrimination of any kind against another person of the same ethnic group, that is what colorism is. So not everything falls under that category. And so with the proper context in mind, it is very difficult to make the conclusion, if you are thinking about it from a more critical lens, to think about a situation in that regard as colorist would be to dismiss all of the context surrounding the people, the relationship between the people, and deciding if a thing is colorist or not based on those factors. But if it's one of my friends saying something about my skin color, first of all, they're not going to say something that intense. Secondly, friends poking fun at other friends' skin is not colorist within the context of their friendship. They are friends. Okay, it's not the same thing to me as friends calling each other the N-word. That's not colorist. That's just racist. I've made a video about this. In fact, I think I made several videos about this. I'm not going to say all this on this video. It's too much. This video is already too long as it is. If a Korean says something about a darker skinned Korean skin, the first thing that Western netizens do, coming to the defense of the darker skinned person, especially black K-pop stans, they come to the defense of the darker person and they'll say things like, don't you know that Korea is a homogenous society? Don't you know that Korea has a history of colorism? Not knowing that a lot of cultures today have a history of colorism. There's contexts that are being left out. Not everything that is done with the intention of actually harming a person, especially within the context of what is being said and the context of the relationship between the person that is saying it and the person that is receiving it. And that is where we constantly keep missing the mark, calling everything colorist or everything something that it's not. And I think that is one of the biggest problems I have seen so far, especially with the video that I put out about Taemin and Key talking about Minho. We jump to the worst case scenario every time, and we never stop to think about, oh, well, let me think about this. They're friends. They've been friends for 15 years. I don't think they would have crossed any boundaries that Minho set if he set them. And I don't think that Taemin and Key would stoop so low as to disregard those boundaries and say, nah, we're just going to poke fun at your skin color anyway because it's funny. I don't think that that's who they are. And if you think that that's who they are, well, then it's obvious why you come to the conclusion that you come to. But everything can't be colorist all the time or racist all the time. We don't even know how to think for ourselves anymore and use critical thinking about who these people are. If it's obviously someone they don't know and the person doesn't like them, or if it's somebody that we don't know if they like them or not, but they're just making a comment, yeah, I can see why that would be colorist. This person is probably using it with the intention to harm a person. But in the context of friendship, 15 years of friendship, and possibly a little bit more than that, how in the world could you assume that it's colorist every single time? It's strange to me. But this is where we've come to. It's a shame because nowadays the truth is viewed as an attack. Honesty is viewed as hate speech. We are creating our own battles instead of looking at what a person says that's not offensive and being at peace with it. And this is how we weaponize race, by shaming everyone who's not attracted to a darker skinned person or screaming colorism every time a person who isn't dark says something about a person's skin, and ignoring the whole context surrounding what's going on in that situation. Context determines whether a person is being racist or sexist or colorist, not feelings. Feelings only determine what and how you feel. They don't and they should not determine what is real. And with that said, this concludes the video. But in my closing, I do want to say this. This video had covered a lot of topics, a lot of different topics, you know, fat shaming, skinny shaming, the plus size community, calling out things that aren't true. But mainly this essay was made and written with Black K-pop stans in mind. Because I am a Black K-pop stan as well, I feel compelled to talk about the ideologies of wokeness within my community and how we attribute these things to K-pop idols. And that was one of the biggest points of this essay that I wanted to highlight. I don't think it is fair to do this to K-pop idols all the time. We don't know these people. We don't know their mindset. We can speculate and assume, but if a K-pop idol says that they are wearing it for a particular reason, instead of viewing it as an excuse or them justifying why they're wearing it to escape criticism all the time, maybe we should just take their words for what they are. But at the end of the day, I think my ultimate point is that woke ideology is what's destroying my personal love for the genre that I've come to love so much. I love K-pop. I love everything about K-pop. Everything. And it brings me no pleasure whatsoever to make stuff like this, to make videos like this, to talk about this stuff. I'm not happy that I have to talk about this stuff. Contrary to what people might think, I'm not happy to talk about the conflict between Black K-pop stans and K-netizens. Brings me no joy whatsoever. The truth of the matter is, I have to talk about this because not many people are. That and the fact that there are K-pop stans who agree with me and believe what I believe, but they're not bold enough to talk about it because they know that they're going to get the heat, which I totally understand from that perspective. And I just want to say that is okay. That is why my channel exists, to take the heat, to take the bullets. But I'm willing to do it because I think we need to hold ourselves to the same standards that we hold idols. If we are saying the N-word, but we expect K-pop idols to not say the N-word, that's a problem. And I'm talking about the Black community. That N-word, if it means what we know it means, and if it is offensive to the point where we want to beat a person up who's not Black for saying the word, then we should not be using the word. Otherwise, it cheapens the entire point that Black K-pop stans are making every time an idol or someone who's not Black says that word. That word is disgusting. It's derogatory. It's still a bad word. It's still a terrible word that denotes slavery, property, all of that stuff that we are no longer adhering to in today's society. That is what it represents, and we shouldn't use it, and no one should use it, honestly. It should just be a banned word. Like, no one should use that word. Also, listen, I want to make this clear at the end of this video. I want to make this very clear. If I feel like an idol is doing something that they should not be doing or saying something they should not be saying, I will hold that idol accountable. Okay, believe me, I will. But for K-pop stans to hold idols to standards that they don't hold themselves to, and I'm talking about like both Korean netizens and Western netizens alike, if we are going to hold them to the standard of you can't do this, you can't do that, then we shouldn't be doing those things either. And one last point that I want to make, telling the truth about something, giving context and not ignoring context is not hate speech or disrespectful, nor is it diminishing the experiences of Black K-pop stans and just Black people in general who have suffered racial discrimination. I'm not talking about a particular country except for America in this video, but if your country also has the same problem of Black people calling out cultural appropriation when it may not be. And listen, I'm not saying that cultural appropriation doesn't exist. It does. I'm saying that it's not always the case. Okay, that's what I'm saying. It is not always cultural appropriation taking place. It is about the intention. What is your intention for wearing this. And if they tell you their intention and it's not cultural appropriation related, then why can't we just believe what they're saying? I don't think it needs to be so one-sided. Oh, it's cultural appropriation all the time, or it's racist all the time, or it's colorist all the time, or it's fat phobia all the time, or it's discrimination against black people all the time. You know, that's not fair, and it's not real. That's just not reality. Reality is that there are two sides. There are people that do things because they appreciate things. There are people that do things to mock things, right? So it can't just be one thing every time. It just doesn't make sense. And you have to explain to me why you think that every act is put into a category, especially after I've done this daggone essay trying to explain to the best of my ability why every act is not something that's like one thing: colorist, racist, this, that, and the other, istphobe, this. So that is all I wanted to say. This video is not intended to hurt the black community. I did not make this video to hurt the black community or to offend the black community in any way. I said that there were some ideologies and thought processes that were childish, and I do stand on that because I have to be honest. I'm not saying that the black K-pop stans or black people are childish people. I'm saying that the thought process of certain things that they espouse to believe in comes from a place of childishness because of not looking at the evidence supporting the opposite opinion or the opposite thought and relying solely on feelings. And I don't want us to rely so much on feelings that we neglect the factual information or the evidence supporting the opposite thought. Okay? I don't want black people, my brothers and sisters, to feel oppressed. I don't want you guys to feel oppressed. I don't want you guys to feel like the world is against you or white people are against you. It's not true. It's not true. It's weird to put white people in a monolith. You know, we like to say that black people aren't a monolith, though. Don't make white people a monolith. And one last point I want to make, I said there was a last point, but this is another last point. I don't like seeing white people being racially profiled and being lumped into a category of, you know, white people are racist, that kind of thing. I don't like that. I don't want black people to do that to white people. I don't want white people to do that to black people. Okay? Black people are retaliating against what white people have done by being racist towards them. And I don't like that. In fact, that's not what Martin Luther King stood for either. You know, it's interesting because we blacks praise Martin Luther King so highly for what he did and what he stood for and what he believed in and his speeches and his words, you know, that we should not fight violence with violence, but with non-violence, right? They bombed your house. You're supposed to show love to them. And love is the way that we change their mindset, because they will see their actions one day as violent and evil against people who are just trying to be understood, heard, seen, believed, and to coexist, because that's what it is. We're trying to have equality, right? And that's what the civil rights movement was for. That's what Martin Luther King stood for, equality. But equality now is black people being racist against white people. And now we have all of this racism against white people, and black people are saying that there's no such thing as reverse racism. And they justified that by saying, oh, you know, the slave owners or whatever, they did this to the black people. They did this to my ancestors. And so now when I'm saying something racially evil against a white person, it's justified because of the past. And that's what I mean by phantom chains. We are wearing the chains of people who are long dead, long deceased, and we're carrying their burden of racial discrimination and injustice on our shoulders when we are living in a country that is more free than a lot of other countries in the world right now. We are doing way better as far as being respectful and accommodating, not only accommodating, but just letting black people have a chance to succeed. We are doing far better in this country than any other country in the world. And yet we are talking about how we're the most oppressed, and we're not. And that's why I made this video. Not only that, but we want people to share in our oppression in our false narrative, a woke narrative, including K-pop idols and companies. And so that's why you've got so many idols apologizing for doing this, that, and the other. And we're like, yeah, that's right. You better apologize because you were wrong. You need to educate yourself. And we're doing the same. We are oppressing everybody else now. Because our ancestors were oppressed, we as the descendants of our ancestors are now oppressing everyone else by telling them what they can't say and what they can say, how they should act and how they shouldn't act. That's not our place. If a person is free to do what they do, they're free to do what they do. I'm not saying that they're free from consequences, but if the consequences are justified, then that's fine. But if you're trying to justify it through the woke lens, a woke ideology, that's wrong. No one should be oppressed like that. No one should be oppressed like that, right? If a K-pop idol says the N-word, that's evil. They shouldn't say it. If a black person says the N-word, I also believe that's evil. They shouldn't say it. Now, people might think, well, that's a bit much. No. This is what I mean by holding yourself to the same standard you hold other people. Okay? Other races don't take black people seriously when we say that this is a evil word and we tell them everything it means, yet we say it to each other out of our own mouths. How in the world are we supposed to invoke change in our society, in our community, when we are literally doing the total opposite of change? We want everything to stay the same. That's not what Martin Luther King stood for. Okay? And I'm not saying that Martin Luther King is like such a great person and an excellent example of everything. That said, what he said about the dream, his dream speech, that is what we should be aspiring to. We shouldn't regress to let's be racist and judge everyone based on their color. We should judge them based on their character. And them wearing a hairstyle that you claim is black is not telling me anything about their character, except that they possibly either are being like disrespectful, or they're imitating the hairstyle because they enjoy the hairstyle, they want to wear it, or they love black culture and that's why they're wearing it. We can't just give everyone the same reason for why they do things. Because when you do that, you could very well be in danger of misrepresenting people's intentions as to why they're doing what they're doing. I do want to say this though, clarify one thing. Not every ideology that is being pushed onto Korea is woke, but the topics that I brought up, those are the woke ideologies, okay? Respecting people's bodies is not woke, but there are certain things like body positivity that I actually believe now to be toxic. I believe body positivity, the whole message of it sounds good, but it is actually quite toxic. There's a lot of things that I used to think were good. I have a lot more stuff to talk about. I don't want to make this channel a political channel or anything like that. I'm just giving you guys the reasons as to why I'm saying that we have to lift ourselves up and stop blaming everything on white supremacy, white this, white that, white, it's white people. White people hold me back. The white government, the white racist system, systemic racism, all this stuff. We blame everything on white people, and yet we love affirmative action. And yet we're willing to take a handout called affirmative action, which is a race-based quota that basically tells black people, you won't be able to get by without government help because you're just that dumb. We're willing to take that, right? But we're not willing to call out the government, the racist government, for creating a race-based quota like affirmative action. And let me be clear, affirmative action did a lot of good for black people back in the day, but we don't need it now, okay? We lift ourselves up. That's what we're supposed to do. And not only ourselves, but lift each other up. I think the black community is so every man for himself minded now, first come, first serve minded now. We don't even know how to do anything together anymore. We don't even know how to come together. So I want us to come together and not be so divided and so hung up on white people all the time. White people are doing this, white people are doing that. Hate to bust your bubble, but the average white person is not a millionaire. They're struggling just as much as we are at times. I would know. I'm 32 years old. I've worked with a lot of white people. They're not all rich. In fact, none of them are rich, working in Walmart or working at Applebee's or whatever. Okay, a lot of them are dealing with the same problems we're dealing with. So let's not act like white people are always holding us back. Let's try to think more critically in the future. And at the end of the day, and this is my last words that I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not trying to tell you what to think or what to believe. That's not what I'm doing. That's not my job. I'm just trying to give you information to show you how to think. And if you would ask me, well, how should I think? My answer is think for yourself. Don't follow sheep mentality, herd mentality all the time. Find out for yourself the information about a thing before you jump on the bandwagon and start calling something colorist or racist without context. The Leo situation was the same thing. People was jumping on the sheep mentality, the herd mentality wagon, trying to say that Leo was misogynistic and all this stuff, and didn't even bother to look at the vlog and listen to the songs, look into the matter. But no. If this person who's black says that this K-pop idol or trainee is appropriating black culture or is being misogynistic, then I'm gonna believe what they say. That is not how we think for ourselves. And that is actually an example of people trying to tell you what to believe. Okay? Don't go look at anything. Don't go research anything. Don't go find out for yourself. Don't use critical thinking, deductive reasoning. Don't do that. I'm saying that they are racist, so you should just believe that. And if you don't, then you're racist or you're part of the problem. That's how people who want you to believe what they believe act. Me, I ain't calling you racist or anything because you don't believe what I believe. I'm saying this is what I have. This is what I believe. And I want you to look for yourself. See if you find what I'm finding. If you find something different or if you believe differently after all this stuff that I'm telling you, that's fine. As long as it's your choice and your decision based on what you believe, based on what you think, and based on your own research, not based on me trying to convince you. And yeah, I mean, a part of me is trying to convince you with the arguments that I brought forth, hoping that they will resonate with you and that they will help you to discover truth for yourself. I mean, being honest, the only reason why arguments are brought forth in the first place is to convince the opposite party. It'd be disingenuous of me to act like that's not why I made this video. But honestly, beyond all of my points and me trying to convince you of things, the main thing I'm trying to convince you to do is simply to just think for yourself. I think for myself, therefore I did my own research and I came to this conclusion that is not very popular among a lot of other people that might not agree with this, but this is the conclusion I came to with all of the research that I did and all of the things that I looked at and looked into regarding woke culture. This is what I have found. And thinking for yourself and coming to the conclusions that I come to will land you in hot water and you will get backlash for it. Of course you will, because it is the opposite thought of what every person that believes themselves to be oppressed thinks. But it is okay. The more we normalize common sense and truth, the less of a problem it would be to tell the truth in a world where the truth is seen as hate speech, because that's what's happening now. Evidential stuff, context, no, it's all about what I feel. Forget context, forget all that stuff. I feel this way, therefore I am. That's not how this works. And that's all I wanted to say here in this video. That was the point of this video. So I am sorry that this video is so long and I'm still talking even after this. I'm gonna have to do a lot more editing with this part, but I did want to give you guys my last final words for this essay and to thank you guys so much for making it to this point in the video. I know this was a very long video and I do apologize for that again, but thank you so much for listening to me rant and rave and give my points about what is going on in the community, in the black community, K-pop community, and in the K-pop world, and how our ideologies are being pushed in other parts of the world. Like I said, there's so much more to this. Like, I didn't even get into the Japanese aspect of it and how woke ideologies are being pushed onto Japanese media, which that might be a whole nother topic altogether. But yes, that is all I wanted to say. An hour and 33 minutes. I need to stop. before this gets any further. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for staying till the end. I know I talk a lot. I'm so sorry, but I really needed to share this last little bit of information with you. I love you guys so much. I really do. That's why I made this video. I love you guys. I love my black brothers and sisters. I love my white brothers and sisters. I love all of y'all. And I want us to get along in a community where K-pop should be fun, right? So let's make it fun. And let's call out things that are wrong. And let's use deductive reasoning, critical thinking to come to the conclusions that we come to and not follow the sheep mentality, okay? I love y'all so much. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more content from your boy. And until next time, it will be your boy Abe signing out. Peace. I love y'all so much. Bye.